Welcome to Series 5 of the Lassie Lounge podcast. Join me, Katie Taylor, as we talk balancing hormones, busting myths, breaking taboos, boosting libidos, and bolstering confidence. Why not grab a coffee, take a seat, or go for a walk and join us in the Lassie Lounge as we chat all things midlife, menopause, and beyond. With thanks to our friends at Youth and Earth for making this podcast possible. What comes to mind when you hear the word hypnotherapy? Relaxation? A deep sleep? Or perhaps you're more of a sceptic and imagining being taken into a trance-like state? Well, in this episode, I'm joined by experienced clinical hypnotherapist Sally Garozzo, and we're going to explore the practice of hypnotherapy and hear about how it could ease menopausal symptoms such as hot flushes, anxiety, and sleep disturbances. Sally will help us to bust some myths about hypnotherapy, help us understand the benefits, and learn exactly how it can help during the perimenopause and menopause years. As well as being an award-winning clinical hypnotherapist and an advanced rapid transformational therapist, Sally is also the founder of the Menopause Mindset Hypnosis collection, which is the world's only powerful set of hypnosis recordings specifically for menopause symptoms. She also helps people with insomnia inside her Sleep Superpower Academy. Welcome, Sally. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Katie, for having me.
Firstly, some of us might have heard of hypnotherapy, but perhaps they don't really know what it is.
Yeah.
And for me, I always used to think it was that, what you see on television, some sort of psychiatrist who's swinging a coin in front of your face and trying to sort of count you down to sleep. So maybe you can kind of bust that myth and define, what is hypnotherapy and actually how does it sort of differ from some other therapies out there?
Yeah. Well, there is a little bit, it's not swinging, you're not swinging a pendulum, but you do a countdown process to enable people to relax a little bit more, because essentially that's all hypnotherapy is. It's a massive misconception that it is this sort of woo thing, this magic thing, but it's not really. So we're in and out of hypnosis all day. It's like the daydreaming state, when we're in the zone, when time passes by really quickly. We're in that hypnotic state when we're making a cup of tea, when we're driving our car, when we're immersed in a book or a TV show. You're kind of in a form of hypnosis, and you're very suggestible when you're in that brainwave state. The brainwaves are slower than normal waking state. And hypnotherapy itself is interesting because it's a process. So unlike typical talk therapy, where you're just sort of going along every week and it's like a never-ending cycle with talk therapy, which is wonderful. But with hypnotherapy, it's slightly different because it's a process. It's got a beginning, a middle, and an end. And essentially, it takes aspects of different types of therapies like psychotherapy, CBT, NLP, parts therapy, positive suggestion therapy, and it does it under hypnosis. So the method that I am trained in is called rapid transformational therapy, and it's a 2 to 3 hour process. So it's a long time. You're on the couch for a long time, and it's fascinating. It's a little bit like watching a movie of your life in your mind, and you put a happy ending on the story. So you look at all the traumatic stuff that's happened to you, which obviously is difficult for people. I'm there to help facilitate a space for them to heal. We're like a surgeon. We open you up and then we put you back together again. We clear out all the stuff that you don't want, and then we put you back together again using really powerful language. Positive language. Metaphor is used a lot. The subconscious mind loves a good metaphor. If I say to you, your mind is like a beautiful still lake, you can really feel that. You know what it feels like to be around a still lake, and it's got that sense of peace and calm. And if we can link a still lake with the state of our mind, then it has a powerful effect on the way that we view life. Because the mind is always looking for The mind's always looking for clues as to how to respond. So, you've got to give your mind good news. That's how we work in hypnotherapy. But essentially, it's slightly different from talk therapy in that it's a process. And also in talk therapy, what can happen is that, and I've experienced this myself, I've had a lot of talk therapy myself, and eventually I'm like, you know what? I'm just wiring in the problem, going over it and over, rehashing the same thing. I don't mind it. If I'm just going once a month to kind of clear out the dross of the month, that's fine. But when you're going week after week after week, I recognize that this isn't really doing me any good. It was fine at first. I needed to, go through some stuff. But, Hebb's principle states that neurons that fire together wire together. So if you're constantly talking about the problem, you're wiring that problem in. And that's why hypnotherapy is different, because you get to wire in the solution. I create a recording for my clients, and that recording contains all the stuff that you need to hear, all the positive stuff. And you play that on repeat every day, and you learn it like you would learn a song. When you learn a song, you don't necessarily study the lyrics. You just pop it on repeat. You listen to it a lot, and before you know it, you know all the words. And it's similar with the hypnosis recording. So you're really wiring in the change that you want to see. I hope that makes sense.
There's so much to unpack there. And it's interesting, you said at the start that we're often in a sort of hypnotic state in the day. And that's so true. Actually, when I think about making a cup of tea and I'm kind of staring out the window and one of my kids say, oh, can I borrow a tenner? And you're so vulnerable and you're sort of half listening and half not. And you go, yeah, sure. And then you're like, actually, hang on, what did I just do?
Yeah.
And so I hadn't really thought about it in that way. So look, there's so much I want to ask you, but let's just look at the science first. I mean, what is the science behind that? What is actually happening within the body and mind during a hypnotherapy session?
Well, essentially, as I said before, the brain waves are slowing down. So when the brain waves are slow, so in hypnosis, just got my little form here, beta brain waves are what you and I are in now. We're engaged in conversation. The brain waves are quite fast. A Formula One driver, he's in gamma, he's super, super focused and his brain waves are super fast. When we are in alpha and theta brainwaves, they're slowing right down. And so when the brainwaves are slower, all that kind of processing power that is needed for normal daily life gets put to one side. And we can actually start to focus on the deep work. The parasympathetic nervous system is more activated. So that means we're more relaxed. We feel safer. We're in that rest and digest mode, as opposed to the sympathetic activated state that we can be in with gamma and beta brainwaves. So there's a lot of potential to really access the rules of the mind, and the rules of the mind are really interesting. So the rules of the mind are: your mind always believes what you tell it. Your mind automatically rejects the unfamiliar and accepts the familiar. Your mind always moves you away from pain and towards pleasure. And the other rule is that your mind cannot hold on to a conflicting thought. They cancel each other out. So these are the rules of the mind. And under hypnosis, because we're so relaxed and because all that other processing power is put to one side, we can really go in and essentially play with the rules of the mind. So, if you want, I can go into a little bit more detail about the rules of the mind if you'd like.
Well, that would be really helpful, but it might be helpful in the context of sort of who might be a good candidate for hypnotherapy during menopause, but looking at the benefits of it during that menopausal phase in particular, sort of looking at the symptoms that it can help with.
The idea that hypnotherapy can help with menopause is very new. People who are going through menopause and they're looking for a solution wouldn't normally think about hypnotherapy, right? I get that. They're thinking about HRT, they're thinking about diet, lifestyle, exercise, and things like that. This is where it really gets interesting, because I help people with anxiety, with depression, with low self-confidence, with like reclaiming their authenticity, reclaiming their identity. And also things like insomnia, we know that comes up at menopause. Fear of driving comes up at menopause. It's incredible how much fear of driving I work with. Burnout, stress, all of these things. Now, the therapy that I do, RTT, is really interesting because we go into your childhood and we deconstruct your childhood. We look at the messages that you received about yourself and how you kind of act them out, how you play them out. And I started to have a hunch that there might be a link between my clients, who were all of menopausal age, and the work that I was doing with them, deconstructing childhood, putting them back together again with new thoughts of how they wanted to be in the world. So I started squirreling the internet, as you do, and I came across a study, really interesting study. I think your listeners will be fascinated with this, from the Mayo Clinic. And a group of scientists from the Mayo Clinic got together to examine the association between adverse childhood experiences and menopause symptom severity. And they concluded, I think they interviewed about 1,000 people, and they conclude, or over 1,000 actually, concluded that there was indeed a correlation. They saw a correlation between adverse childhood experiences and menopause symptom severity. And then, of course, you think, well, what's going on there then? When you look at the work of Gabor Mate and Bessel, van der Kolk, they talk a lot about the mind-body connection and how hidden stress from the past can really have an impact on our nervous system, our biology, our mental health, our mental state of mind. And then, we can take a leap in logic and extrapolate that to what's happening in menopause, because women are the, as Gabor Mate says, the shock absorbers of society. We think, well, maybe there is something going on here. And, speaking from personal experience, when I look at myself, when I feel safe, when I feel seen, when I feel validated, when my work-life balance is good, when I've got money in the bank, when my friendship circle's going really well, my menopausal symptoms are pretty much non-existent, as opposed to when I'm feeling taken advantage of, when I'm feeling stressed, when I'm feeling worried, when I'm, worried about the state of the world, when there's pressure on me. I can't sleep. My hot flushes in the middle of the night are a nightmare. And, I start to feel those menopausal symptoms a lot more, especially the vasomotor symptoms. So, part of the work that I do with hypnotherapy in RTT for menopause is we go really deep. We look at those messages that you received about yourself and about the world around you. How are you acting out those messages? I'm not good enough. I need to be better. I need to help everyone. And how are you compensating, or how are you overcompensating for those needs not being met as a child? And how has that affected your nervous system? How has that potentially affected your hormone balance? And then, more importantly, how can you free yourself from that past narrative and then put a new ending on that story? Because as I said before, your mind always believes what you tell it. So if you put a new ending on that story, you can change your nervous system, you can change your biology to a degree. We don't know how much of a degree that is, but there is a degree of change. And so it's extremely powerful. And, it really is my sincere hope that women do start to think deeper. If they're having really bad menopausal symptoms, HRT is not working, diet and lifestyle is not working, because of course we have to do all these things. Maybe there's something else that they could consider. Maybe there is a deeper aspect that could have a deeper impact on the nervous system. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point, actually, because we hear from a lot of women in our community who have either tried to adjust their diet or sort of do more exercise, or have taken HRT and perhaps they're still not feeling great. And I suddenly thought, throughout those three sort of changes, they've probably never actually spoken about their history and what's come before. And there's probably a lot of us who have deep rooted, stresses that have been triggered from either experience or just, a general life, story. And I think this really should be part and parcel as yet another one of those, areas to really consider seriously, when you're going through symptoms, and perhaps that, even if they are, your symptoms are pretty manageable, it sounds to me like it would be a really, beneficial thing to do. So, I mean, talking about benefit, how would you know if it would benefit you? And is it something you can go ahead with alongside, perhaps other medical treatments and, switching everything else up a bit if needed?
Yeah, you can absolutely use it alongside medication, HRT. So if someone's having talk therapy, I wouldn't necessarily. So the way that I work is I work with people in a 30-day block. I wouldn't have talk therapy in those 30 days because there could be a conflict of interest. Obviously, our all therapists' best interest is the client, but therapists have their own lens that they work through, and that lens might be a bit different. So if you're going to do something like hypnotherapy, which is a solution-focused therapy, you should probably do that on its own. Have your therapy before and after, for sure, but just while that's going on. I think people who are drawn to hypnotherapy are people who can't take HRT or who don't want to take HRT. Maybe they're curious about the mind-body connection. Maybe they want to explore this phenomenon within themselves to sort of find out more about this, how their mind-body connection can play out within them, because it is fascinating. When you start to realize you can have a physical response to something imagined. Have you ever done the lemon test, Katie?
No. I'm curious.
Well, let me talk you through it. So basically, you imagine that you're sucking a lemon. So you can close your eyes, you can visualize that really sour lemon in your hand, that lemon wedge. You bring that lemon up and you bite down. You imagine that you're biting down on a lemon, you're sucking the juice out of the lemon, you're chewing the flesh, you can smell the lemon. And what you find is that you start to salivate just at the thought of doing that. I mean, you have to kind of close your eyes and do it. And your listeners, if you're not driving, try it, because it's fascinating how you think, oh my God, I'm salivating, but there's no lemon there. So it's like you've had a physical response to something imagined. And so, yeah, I just think that people who are like intuitively drawn to hypnotherapy as an alternative, I think there's something in that. If you're not drawn to it, it might not be for you. If you just think, oh no, that's not for me, then don't do it. It might be that in the future, the penny drops or something lands for you. So I think that there are no guarantees, right? There are no guarantees that it's going to have an effect. I work with some people and it really hasn't had the effect that they wanted it to have. 95% of the people I work with have amazing positive effects, but like anything, there are no guarantees. You have surgery, there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee with HRT. So you just have to take a punt on it, really.
Yeah, and it's funny because, growing up as a doctor's daughter, I've become a bit of a cynic in life. And actually, I'm sure things like hypnotherapy are probably not taught at medical school. And actually, perhaps they should be, because I don't think it's right to go around sort of poo-pooing things that are helpful and complementary. It's different if it would actually have an adverse effect. So if someone said, oh, I've got breast don't take chemotherapy, just close your eyes and it will be cured, that's different. But if you've really tried lots of things and there's no harmful side to it, which is actually what I was going to go on to, I mean, are there any sort of negatives? I mean, if someone has had something very traumatic happen in their life and and perhaps they sort of break down in front of you, how do you put them back together?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, it's a good thing, because that's what we want. We want that breakdown. We want someone to open up. There's a saying in therapy, you can't heal it you can't heal it unless you feel it. You have to feel it. So yes, of course, I think people are very worried about opening Pandora's box. We keep a tight lid on things. It's a survival instinct. we go through our life because we have to cope. And so we put things in a box. We've got kids, we've got work, we've got to do what we've got to do. And so suddenly you come and have therapy and I'm taking that box off. So you have to be ready for it. You have to know that this is the right time for you. And it might not be the right time, and that's fine. But also as well, I facilitate a very safe space for my clients. And often what they find is that once they access that trauma and re-feel it as an adult through the adult lens, going through that complete journey, if we didn't finish that journey, they would leave without being put back together. You have to sew someone back up like you would in surgery. They wouldn't just go out with a gaping hole. So that's why it's a safer process to do it with a trained facilitator. And you get such clarity. You just get such clarity from opening you up, seeing those past experiences with your adult mind. And you're also as well encouraged to feel the feelings, knowing that those feelings are valid, because a lot of the problems come from, not from your feelings being invalidated. So you were a child and you had a feeling, and that feeling was shut down, and that's where the problem is, not the feeling. So you allow that person to feel the feeling. It rises up. It might feel a bit uncomfortable. They might have a cry. They might want to kick and scream. But then it's done. It's over. And people can leave my practice feeling a bit raw. I'm not going to lie. But because we have that 30-day support, I'm always there at the end of a WhatsApp message to help support them and to help talk them through the process, to help them kind of discharge any pent up anxiety that comes up as a result of that.
So, it sounds like a very safe space, and obviously, it's not going to be a quick fix. And this is, I'm assuming, sort of 30 days every day. Is there a way for people to get some of these benefits perhaps from home, or does it need to be a sort of face-to-face session? And also, I'd love to understand actually what a typical session, would look like in terms of what actually is rapid transformational therapy, what happens when it's done.
During the process. Yeah. So yes, you can get benefits from hypnotherapy without having a session. There are loads of free hypnosis resources on YouTube and on Spotify that just take you into that theta brainwave state, because that in itself is so healing for the body. You slow your brainwaves down, and your mind and body can get to work on things that it never usually has a chance to fix, because it's on high alert all of the time. So even if you had no suggestions being incoming, you would still benefit. I've actually got I haven't mentioned this, but I've actually got 4 recordings for sale on my website, specifically for menopausal symptoms, which have been really beneficial. And they're just hypnosis recordings. One's called Cool Your Hot Flush. One is Ignite Your Libido, which is very powerful, by the way. One is Clear Your Brain Fog, and the other one is Sail Through Menopause. So they are based on the idea that what is expected tends to be realized. So when you expect something different, you have a different result. So there's lots of imagery, especially with the hot flush one, that cools you down and enables you to cope with those power surges a little bit easier. So yes, so there's plenty that you can do without having to blow the lid off your childhood if you're not ready to do that. So in a rapid transformational therapy session, it's a long process. It's 2 to 3 hours. I pop you into hypnosis, which takes about 15 minutes or so. Then we do regression. So we go back to scenes in your life where you might have picked up limiting beliefs about yourself, unhelpful beliefs that are really not very good for you, like I'm not good enough, I have to take on all this responsibility, nobody believes me, things like that. So a lot of this is established in the consultation. We look at what that little child felt, what meaning he or she attached to that scene. we then look at how you're playing out, how are you acting out those meanings today, or how are you compensating? Like I compensate for not liking myself very much by drinking a lot to avoid my feelings, or my feelings were pushed down, so I compensate by eating a lot because eating was the thing that we did in our house, or eating makes me feel connected to my family, so that's why I continue to do it today. So we get absolute clarity on why you are the way that you are. We then take a pair of scissors and cut them up. So we go, well, just because that happened to you in the past, does that mean that's who you have to be today? And then, of course, with your logical mind kicks in and goes, well, no, of course not. I'm a different person. I'm no longer that child anymore. So we go through this whole like spiel about that's not me anymore. I'm not that child anymore. When I was a child, I was helpless. It was right to be helpless as a child. It was right to push my feelings down as a child. I needed to attach to my caregivers. Now I'm an adult. I don't have to do that today because I have absolute liberty to express myself the way that I want to. If I cry in public, my parents not going to shut me down anymore because I'm an adult. I make my own money now. I don't need my parents' approval anymore. So we go through all of that process. We do something called role function and purpose as well, which is fascinating. And that talks to the part of you that has the problematic behavior. So, for example, anxiety, we'll say, I'm the part of Sally that has this anxiety, and my only role in Sally's life is to, and then you put an ending on that. So is to, I'm there to stop her, and I have to stop her because if she goes out into public, somebody might see that she's a fraud, or all my dark secrets are coming out now. But basically, you look at, okay, so the problem is giving you this thing, and it's usually protection or prevention. In some cases, it's punishment. Some cases, it's like to get attention. And we go, well, is that really giving you that now? And then, of course, the answer is usually no. And so we negotiate with it. We ask it to leave, and we do this whole thing around talking to the problematic part of yourself so that it gets to have a voice. And then I create an amazing recording for you at the end for you to go away with and listen to, which is personalized for you. There is a bit more in it, but, for the sake of time, and also for the sake of I don't want to spoil the surprise, because part of the way that RTT works is like watching a film for the first time. You want that element of surprise.
It's interesting. I'm not going into too much personal stories, although I've probably mentioned it before, but I was once recommended to do it. I lost a very, very good friend in my final year of university, and we never were offered counselling. I blamed myself for it, even though as an adult I know it wasn't my fault or it was totally out of my control. But you spend years either avoiding it or, as you say, coping with some really unhelpful coping mechanisms. And then you kind of get to midlife and and people start saying, well, why didn't you ever address it? And I think it's the fear of what you've just said, the thought of actually having to revisit it and possibly kind of break down, and that, you've got to be in that right frame of mind, because you're going to become very vulnerable, and perhaps you want to shut out that kind of memory and think, well, I'm coping enough. But the reason I mention my own experiences, I had a friend who went through something even more traumatic, and she is absolutely convinced that's why her anxiety and her perimenopause symptoms when she was in her 40s were 10 times worse, because she'd tried everything, but everything was so much more, her symptoms were so much more heightened. And she has gone for therapy, not this one, but having heard you talk about it, I think it's a really, really valuable extra tool that I hope all our listeners will at some point consider it if they think it's helpful. So look, Sally, I could talk I could talk to you for hours about this, because you've really sort of ignited a healthy interest in me. Well, what's the one thing that you wish more people knew about hypnotherapy, and the sort of the, RTT, and what would you wish for them?
Well, I really do wish, as I said before, that people that are going through the menopause would know that this is an available treatment, a viable treatment for menopause symptoms, and also for all the other existential stuff that comes up at menopause. Who am I? What value do I have in the world? What do I bring? And also a lot of stuff about the way we look comes up at menopause as well. Body dysmorphia can appear, and eating disorders can often start to appear. So, there's a lot to it. And also, I wish that people would understand the amount of power that they have, especially when it comes to their intentions and their expectations. I'm reading a brilliant book at the moment called The Expectation Effect by David Robson. And it's blowing my mind at how we literally, our eyes only see like 2% of what is there, and then the brain fills in the rest. So the brain is like responsible for 98% of the picture that we have. And by picture, I mean perspective, the perspective that we have. Our perspective of menopause, our perspective of our relationships, of other people, of who we are, what we bring, is all based on our filters, our own filters. So, yeah, my wish is that people do start to think differently rather than thinking, oh, maybe I need to tweak my dose. Of course, tweak your dose if you need to, but maybe it's deeper than that. And please consider it. But only have the hypnotherapy if it feels like the right time for you, because we do go deep and you need to be ready for it. But if you are ready for it, it can be absolutely life-changing.
And actually, but before I let you go, as I listen to you, it is actually a form of self-care. We're so busy in midlife juggling, whether it's kids or aging parents or relationships or working, and when do we ever just kind of stop and just think, okay, actually, I'm just going to take a minute. And I think this would be a very effective tool. So on that note, and obviously we're going to put everything in the show notes, but where can people find out more about you and also those recordings that you mentioned?
Yeah, so if you go to sallygarozzo.com/shop, you'll get to those recordings. If you just go to sallygarozzo.com, you will find everything about my hypnotherapy work there. I'm also really active on Instagram. I do a lot of stories and reels. And I am Sally Garozzo at Sally Garozzo Mind Mentor on Instagram.
Lovely. And you've also got a fabulous podcast that I was very, very honoured to be on too. So I really recommend everyone has a listen to the Menopause Mindset podcast as well. So thank you, Sally, so much for talking to me. And I hope everyone who was listening found that really helpful too.
Thanks for having me, Katie.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to the Latte Lounge podcast. Please subscribe wherever you're listening so you don't miss our next episode. For more support with all things menopause and midlife, head to our website, lattelounge.co.uk, and search for the Latte Lounge group on Facebook. This podcast was sponsored by Youth and Earth and produced by Emily Crosby Media.